Good afternoon. Welcome to this town hall meeting, which is being held by the Subcommittee B of the University Strategic Plan Steering Committee. We would like to present some information to you on background on the meeting. This is a working session where we are actually collecting input from you. No, this doesn't work. Of course, the remote doesn't. Lina, could you go to the next one, please? All right. A University Strategic Planning Steering Committee was appointed in January, and since then we have been working on this process, and several things have happened since then. One of them is that a website was launched in March, and there was an online form for input that has been made available. Originally, it closed on April 25, and we extended it until May 9. The link is still there, and if anybody still wants to provide input, they can. We had this deadline because there's going to be a first cut for data collection, and that was the date that we selected. The steering committee has organized itself into 5 subcommittees. These subcommittees brought in additional faculty representation and other members of the university community. In particular, we are Subcommittee B, which is dealing with faculty and administrators in the Academic Affairs Division only. Other people in our division, such as staff or other members of the university, like students, alumni, they are covered by the activities of the other subcommittees. Next, this is not working. So. All right. We're using a variety of methods, and most of them have been working sessions with different groups. And this has included the Academic Senate, which was the first one, the Dean's Council, AVPs, Associate Deans, the Council of Chairs, Center Directors, and the Early Career Faculty. We have a total of 9 sessions, of which 2 are town hall meetings. Today is our first town hall meeting, and in a way is a test because we're trying to see if our format today works. The first time we did one of the other sessions, we worked with the Senate hoping everything went well, and it went really well, so we didn't change our recipe too much. So today there are some changes on how we have done it before, and that's also because we're streaming this and we're hoping for participation for people who are looking at this online and hopefully providing some input as well. Anyone can still provide feedback after this town hall meeting if anybody has any input that they would like to provide to the steering committee. Very simple address, strategicplan@cpp.edu. So today's session is basically an initial step to try to understand and characterize Cal Poly Pomona's current state. Where are we in terms of strengths, challenges, and areas of opportunity? So we're hoping to hear your aspirations for the university through the activity that we have today. All the input that's being collected, not just by our subcommittee, but also other subcommittees on campus, will be provided to the steering committee. And then there will be in-depth analysis, and at a later stage we will be then determining strategic alternatives for the university. So the first thing is that we want you to be very frank and open. We are not going to attribute any comments to any person in particular. The more feedback that is provided, the better data set that the committee has to work with. And one thing that we want to emphasize is that this is a data collection phase only, and we are not here today to have a discussion and come to an agreement or a consensus or solve any problems. We're here only to collect input. Our discussion topics are these that are shown on the screen right now. We have prompts and questions that are basically around these topics. So the first one is areas of strength. I highlighted the keywords on the slide presentation. And these are the areas of strength that provide a foundation for a continued emphasis of the university. Opportunities or challenges that can be addressed or taken advantage of strategically. A unique value proposition and forces in higher education. And that means changes and forces in the higher education landscape that actually may influence our positioning in the future. Themes or mechanisms that we could use to focus on, evidently, the alternatives as we consider the strategic plan as part of this process. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be presenting questions, and we're very fortunate to have this platform that we're using, which is today's Meet. You need to select a nickname and use the link that's shown on the screen that was also distributed on those handouts. So if you have a hard time looking at the screen, the pink handouts that you have also have the link. You'll need to use your iPhone or iPad, or if you brought a laptop, any of those will work. If you are not inclined to use this kind of technology, we also have sticky notes and pens, and they are on the tables on the side over there where members of the committee are standing, and you can then write it on a sticky note, and we have these easels here with large sheets, and you can just post your answers there. We also are going to have some opportunities to hear you, and for that, we need you to grab the microphone and speak at the microphone, because in order to have a transcript of what you're contributing, we need to hear you well. So please don't speak from your seat. There are 2 microphones, one on each side of the room at the front, so grab one of those mics, please. We're transcribing all the input. We're not identifying people. We're not saying, you know, who, even if we know who you are, we're not going to write that on the transcript at all. So we're going to get started, and our first prompt is this: what does Cal Poly Pomona do exceptionally well? We are going to allow 2-3 minutes for people to start providing input via today's Meet. After those 2-3 minutes, then we're going to have 5 minutes of discussion where we want people in the room to grab the microphone and tell us a little bit more about what they just wrote over there. If you're using the sticky notes, please write 1 thought per sticky. Don't write a whole bunch of ideas in one, just 1 thought per sticky. And then the facilitators are going around the room to collect the input. So we will get started now by clicking on the link, and we'll see what happens, what kind of input we're receiving. If anybody needed to use an iPad, we have some iPads, correct, on that table on the side. So if you don't have a phone or you want to borrow an iPad, we have them on the side as well. So feel free. So we've gone about 2.5 minutes, and what we will encourage everyone to do, whether you're here or you're watching this remotely, is while people are speaking on the microphone, if you still have additional thoughts, you can continue to provide input via today's meet. So we're not stopping it. We're going to let it run while we are listening to people who want to share their thoughts using the microphone. So we start now the process of letting you share your thoughts with everybody in the room. Anybody who wants to grab a mic and share with everyone else. So anybody wants to share anything and grab the microphone? It has to be on, turn on.
Besides everything said, I think the support that faculty get through the professional development is something that really is amazing. That whenever faculty needs something to learn new or something, we can go to the faculty center and they're really supportive. That's, I think, it's unique. I just want to bring that up.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, even if you wrote your thoughts on today's meet, but you want to expand a little bit or want everybody to hear, I'm sure we couldn't keep track of what you were writing. We are going to get a transcript of this later, but if you want to share what you wrote, that's what we want to hear because that interaction is also interesting. So anyone else wants to participate? All right, bring the microphone.
Well, I said, this is Frank Ewers here, I said undergraduate research, and I think that we do much more of it than people realize, I think, and as it's been starting to be documented by the Office of Undergraduate Research, it's remarkable how many of our students engage in undergraduate research and the impact that has on their careers.
All right, somebody else?
My name's Peter Ross. I guess I would just second Frank's point. I think Cal Poly does very well at organizing student projects with faculty or on their own to do really amazing things. I mean, and I'm familiar with this across the university. So engineering majors have to do projects and they're observed by professionals. There's the Rose Float project that I've been involved with a couple of years in a row. It's just amazing to see. So coordinated projects among students to have sort of transformational experiences.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ruth in the front.
How's that? I would add to transformative experience because you see the students when they come in. I teach in CIS and CIS 101, and they're very young and they're very green. And then I see them in senior project, and it's incredible the difference from when they got here to when they graduate, and seeing them go through a senior project and realize I can do this and put everything together and then go out and get a job. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yes, John in the back.
Yes, I think I would add that in my time here at Cal Poly, one of the things that has impressed me is the commitment of our faculty to student learning, and that, is borne out in so many different ways in different departments, but it really is an overwhelming philosophy here that I think we should be proud of.
Thank you. Still have a little bit of time. All right, I think we can go to the next one. Now, the things that have been described as the strengths or things that Cal Poly does well, which one of these do we do better than other institutions, and which ones do we do as well as other institutions? And when you're providing this input, then tell us what institutions you're thinking of when you're making that comparison. We are going to ask you to have discussion, but we also are going to allow at the same time of the discussion, anybody who feels more comfortable using today's Meet, go ahead and provide some input via today's Meet. And if you are watching remotely, then feel free to participate using today's Meet. But we open again for oral participation, and the microphones will be taken to you. Just raise your hand. That will be a little faster than having everybody come to the front. So anybody who wants to share thoughts, we're not going to wait for today's Meet. We're just going to start right away hearing people. Yes, in the back again.
One of the things I noted on my comment was student-centered, learn by doing philosophy, Cal Poly's Polytechnic Learn by Doing philosophy. And recently, during our program review, I had an opportunity to survey the way other CSUs approach particular issues in their history departments. And I thought that our research-based approach and the senior thesis project that we have our students do is something that actually gets students doing history, and I think we do that better than other CSUs.
Mm-hmm. Other ideas, other thoughts?
One thing I've noticed when I've gone to the CSU student research competitions is that we tend to have more student teams represented, where there'll be teams of students working together, and it does, and sometimes these teams are amazing what they accomplish together. And so I've noticed this especially in engineering, also in business and science, really all the disciplines, more so than in other universities.
Franklin, is that in comparison to other CSU or in general other universities?
Well, I was comparing other CSUs, but I think it's probably true in general.
All right, thank you.
So I'll speak just from my very specific experience with respect to senior projects. I can say that the university's combination of professional schools and then liberal arts colleges provides for the program I direct, which is Science, Technology, and Society, a much better opportunity than other CSUs would be able to provide. So if I have an STS student doing a senior project with respect to something like computer security, right, we have not only CS but CIS departments. If I have someone who's interested in working on water, right, they have a College of Agriculture with people that are interested in that. I mean, we have resources here where they're the envy of other folks. So, for example, the Claremont colleges have an STS program as well. And talking to the director there, I mean, he pointed out, well, but you have the professional schools, and that makes a big difference.
Thank you. Other ideas? We have about 3 more minutes scheduled for this.
I would also like to probably add that the diversity that we have on campus is extremely unique, and I think that actually plays to a huge benefit. Giving students opportunity to interact with different students from, we sort of sit on this edge of, LA County to Inland Empire and Orange County. I think it's a very interesting university, and so I think that provides a lot of useful insight for the students. And I would find it hard to find another diverse campus like this in the CSU or elsewhere.
Thank you. All right, our time allocation, we had assumed that there will be more people here, so we can shorten it. We don't have to wait necessarily. So we go now to our next prompt. And this is one that sometimes provokes more input. What are some of the concerns you have or challenges you think that the university faces, either from your own experience or from what you hear from your peers? We'll do the same. We'll start with about a couple minutes. It doesn't have to be 3, just allowing you to start putting some input on today's meet. But then we also want to hear from you. Again, since we don't have the question there anymore, what are some of the concerns you have or challenges that you think the university faces? So it's been a couple of minutes, and now we would like to hear from you. Even if you wrote it, or you're still writing, then keep writing. But we would like to hear. Sometimes by listening to others, we can think of other things that we had not thought about before. So please raise your hand if you're willing to share your thoughts.
I think if probably one of my biggest concerns that sometimes we make very generic statements of what we want to be and what we value, but then we don't follow up with action. And some of the action actually, in fact, contradict what we say. I think this is probably the area where we can significantly improve.
All right. Anyone else? Concerns, challenges?
I think one concern I have is that it seems that there aren't intellectual events that draw the whole campus together in a way that would be really fun and exciting. And what I have in mind is I don't think there are events where I can anticipate seeing friends from engineering and bio and the College of Agriculture and so forth, I don't see that there are things that draw all the folks together. I know that there's the Kellogg Distinguished Speaker Series, but then that's got, I mean, as far as I can tell, that's a hard thing to actually get into because it's so oversubscribed. I mean, so there are so many people that if you show up at a certain point in time, it's hard to get in the room and stuff like that. I mean, that's the only thing that it would approach what I have in mind.
All right. Over here again. Michael. Over here.
I think one other concern that I have is that we often we talk about general education versus area of expertise education. And quite often it seems to be that we treat them as two separate things. We somehow expect that engineers need to get general education, but yet we don't expect other disciplines to get general education in engineering. And I think we have to figure a way how to make it truly interdisciplinary education and not necessarily two separate areas of education.
Over there.
I think the issue of workload for faculty, especially with the trend, the downward trend overall in the last 10 or 15 years in the proportion of tenured and tenure line faculty, and the way in which this impacts a number of areas of our lives, not just teaching, but also service negatively. And as more work falls on a relatively smaller coterie of tenured faculty, it makes it more difficult to find time to engage in the kinds of intellectual activities that Peter raised. So I think this is, the issue of tenure line faculty, having sufficient numbers of tenure line faculty touches on so many issues: workload, the intellectual life of the university, advising.
Thank you.
Mohammed Hussain from Computer Science. One of the complaints that I constantly hear from our students is our parking problem. And if you are teaching an 8 a.m. class, you know that you have students coming to the class until like 8:30, 8:45. And the common excuse is, there is no parking space, which is true. So I think moving forward and with the Lanternment facility, I think this could be one of our important issues to make sure that how we integrate the public transportation in the whole planning process between the campuses and then also in individual campuses.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
One problem with adjunct faculty, one quarter when I don't teach, I lose my email. And when I come back, it takes a long time to, again, get my email. So I feel disconnected, even though I have to prepare. I'm participating in some activities, but that's really uncomfortable. It takes a lot of time to get the email back. So it seems that, we can't be engaged. So that's the problem with adjunct.
Thank you. Frank, here. Michael will.
This is related back to transportation. I think for our campus of our size, we really are woefully lacking in bicycle lanes for people to go around on bicycle safely. And I'm, terrified to ride my bicycle to campus because I'd have to come all the way down Temple Avenue and there's no bicycle lane and so forth.
All right. That was. We still can take one more. We're doing well with time. In the back. Yes.
I hope you don't mind my using the microphone here as just to comment on both the transit access issue and the bicycle access issue. I think these are issues that we need to address in the campus master plan, and I hope there are opportunities for input on those sorts of issues going forward as well. And I'd also just like to give everybody a heads up that in the fall, I'm part of a committee that is putting together a conference on alternative transportation on campus. So we hope to have as much participation from students, faculty, and staff throughout the university. And so keep your eyes on your email for announcements that are coming about that.
Very good, thank you. Well, we'll continue now with our prompt, and here's your opportunity. If you could change one thing about Cal Poly Pomona, what would it be and why? And it is one thing, so even though we're encouraging you to use today's Meet, and you could technically type many things, we want you to limit yourself to one thing, whatever you think is the most important issue or item, that's the one. And we would like to hear your thoughts as well, so we'll give you about a minute to start typing your thoughts, and then we'd like to hear from you. All right, so we'll start with a sharing phase again. If you would like to share your thoughts with the rest of the room, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. What would that be, that one thing?
I think I'll kind of repeat what I already wrote, basically. But I think looking at some of the universities in other countries, I think they recognize that having only academics as educators is not necessarily the best mix. And I think we have to start thinking, going back to times when Cal Poly did have a significant proportion of professionals teaching. I think we need to come up with a reasonably good mix. Maybe it's 80-20, maybe it's 70-30, but some kind of mix where professionals can be as successful in academic careers as academics are.
Can you clarify what that means? Are you talking about practicing professionals teaching part-time? Or?
Yes, we have professionals who may have significant experience in the field but not necessarily have PhD, and so they're not able to fully participate in university environment.
All right. Other thoughts? Yes.
If we could organize the number of the buildings in a better way. So this is possible. So we should have the building numbers in a more organized way. So, when we have visitors and look at our map, they don't ask us what's going on.
Thank you. That's a new one. We haven't heard that before in any of the sessions we've been conducting. Any other thoughts? Yes, thank you.
I think if finding a way to connect the, the entrepreneurs coming as a guest speaker more often and motivating them to, get involved, that's a huge opportunity. But I don't see any kind of motivation or encouragement at the faculty level.
All right. Other thoughts, other ideas? Nobody else? One more.
I think maybe we do need to think a little bit of how to change the structure, how we actually evaluate or set up our classes. Sometimes it's almost impossible to administratively to teach interdisciplinary courses or courses that are not typically a standard lecture or lab sessions. I think there is no mechanisms right now that allow you to do this.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wishes to participate? Okay, so we'll move on to our next prompt. And this one is related to part of our name. What does it mean to you to be at a Polytechnic University? Notice that we're not asking you for a definition or anything like that, but more of what it means to you to be at a Polytechnic University. We'll do the same. We'll allow a few minutes just to write, and then we would like to hear your thoughts. So it's been a couple of minutes, and we can actually hear what you have to say. With this kind of question, it's a little bit more limiting because it's a lot of typing. For some people, actually, the description is a little bit more than just a few words. So this is a great opportunity for you to actually explain more what does it mean to you to be at a Polytechnic University.
So, yeah, I think that the presupposition behind the question is quite right, that it's hard to identify what that means, what a polytechnic identity is. So, for example, I brought the list of core values with me, and what it says about polytechnic identity is this, if I can read it. Let's see. We take great pride in our polytechnic identity, realizing our exclusive role in higher education. Cal Poly Pomona responds to its constituents by providing quality instruction in the unique programs that distinguish the university. That says absolutely nothing about what a polytechnic identity is. All it says that it's something we take pride in and that we endeavor to provide quality education. Given this as a core value, I think that's kind of worrisome because it suggests that we don't really know who we are. And as far as I can make out, a polytechnic identity involves science and technology in relation to some sort of broader context, maybe with respect to society and values. But apart from that, I guess I'm not exactly sure.
Other thoughts? We have a microphone on that side as well.
In some ways, being at a polytechnic university means that I have to explain to the general public that we actually have great humanities and social science programs here, because they hear polytechnic and they think it's just engineering. And no offense to my engineer colleagues, but you know, we're so much more than that. And so I think the way we present ourselves to the public, the Polytechnic name is both an opportunity but also a potential, has a potential downside as well. Not that I would get rid of the name, just saying we should make sure everyone understands we are an actual multidisciplinary university.
Here. You have a microphone coming this way.
Oh, hi. To go along with that comment, I heard, I wanted to share something that I heard Dean Jersky say the other day. He said he's afraid that sometimes we put more emphasis on the technic than on the poly. And he thought that we needed to really try and bring, he said maybe we should be polymorphic instead of polytechnic, or some other poly type of thing, but maybe re-emphasize the first part of the word.
Over here, two people on this side.
I want to add a little bit with the poly, because I'm struggling with the word too, polytechnic. I think I totally agree. Science and technology definitely is the emphasis. However, I also see we could be limiting ourselves by focusing just on science and technology, because every discipline is, I think we probably really trying to say is science technology is our tool. It's a tool we use, but while we use the tools, I think maybe we could focus more on the poly or the creative, out of the box, and that kind of open-mindedness and that kind of solution-driven thought of thinking, that kind of philosophy.
Yeah, over here. All right. Victoria.
I spent my sabbatical at a place that had an incredibly focused mission. I was at the Air Force Academy for my sabbatical, super focused mission. And that was kind of a luxury for them. They always knew exactly what they were doing. And then I realized that I'd really rather be here, where our mission is much more democratic and diffuse. And that may be something that we have to live with, that we don't really ever fully grasp what this word polytechnic means, but instead it continues. I've been here for 9 years, and this conversation has happened every year. And it's okay maybe if it doesn't stop.
I'm just wondering if we are maybe too focused on what we think about the Polytechnic versus what the public thinks about the Polytechnic University. And I think to the public, somehow they're able to differentiate between all CSU campuses and 2 Polytechnic universities that CSU campuses have. And I think that probably, whether we like it or not, is related specifically to our strength in engineering and science. And yes, other disciplines are very, very important, but as different CSU campuses, that happens to be our strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that learn by doing used to kind of describe what Polytechnic was about, but I think that, all universities, or many try to claim the same now. And I think that we need to distinguish ourselves further in our, approach to education, as when we had the retreat with the deans, it was suggested it maybe should be, learn by creating or learn by discovery, to bring it to another level of what we're trying to do with our students. Learn by innovating.
All right, our next prompt, we ran out of the time that we had allocated, but it's actually very related to this, so you can continue the discussion if you wanted to say something else. But what is the value of polytechnic universities in higher education, and how do you see that changing going forward? Meaning, is that going to change or not in the future? And we're talking about the value of polytechnic universities. Lena, did we have in the slide, I'm sorry, the version I have here is not the most updated. Did we have 2 minutes or did we start right? Oh, okay, so we have a discussion. We're going to start hearing you right away without waiting. You can still provide input via today's meet, but we're going to let you just grab the microphone right now and we go on. So there's somebody here who wants to participate on this side.
I think if we look maybe in not too distant future, but a little bit further than the next 5 years, I think we probably will see that some of the typical lecture format is probably going to eventually disappear. It's probably going to be in some form of online learning. But what will not disappear is the hands-on, technical, lab space type of education. And I think our main strength is that we have the space and facilities and faculty who are able to do that. And so as the online learning increases, more and more people will be attracted probably to universities that do have these facilities and ability to do hands-on. And I think that's our primary strength.
Thank you. Other thoughts? What is the value of polytechnic universities, and do you see that changing going forward? Here, over here.
I think that one of the value will be if we can kind of redefine what polytechnic means and put it more in terms of interdisciplinary approaches to solving real-world problems that we face today. For example, I think the Provost's initiative of trying to define some clusters of excellence or expertise that are all multidisciplinary in nature versus aligned along departmental boundaries could be something that we could really contribute as a polytechnic university.
Other thoughts? We have plenty of time.
I'll just support that last statement and say that I think this is probably our greatest strength, that we do have a variety of disciplines, and the difficulty we have right now is how to make it all work together. And if we can overcome that challenge, I think our value is going to be even greater.
Thank you. More contributions on the other? Anyone else? All right, then we can move to the next prompt. And it is somehow related to this as well, but a little bit more broad than just staying with Polytechnic, also focusing on the future. So you want to think about higher education broadly. What do you think will be the biggest difference in higher education compared to today in 10 years or more? And I believe that we'll just begin with discussion, and we will not wait. You can still provide input via today's meet, but we want to get started right away with listening to your comments. So broadly, higher education compared to today, 10 years, what would be the biggest difference? thank you.
I think one of my concerns moving forward is that the number of sort of transfers are more likely that less students are going to come in as true freshmen with the constant increase in tuition. I'm talking to more and more seniors, and they're going to community college and waiting to come to here. So I see in the future that trend as tuition continues to grow, students will put off attending a four-year university until they've have some transfer units.
Thank you.
I think looking that far ahead, maybe a little bit further, I think there is going to be probably more self-education and less structured type of education coming up. And I think we have to think of how to adapt to this and allow students who have very specific and particular interests that they can kind of build their own programs rather than being stuck with a particular program.
Thank you.
In 10 years, maybe even 15, 20 years, I would think the education, the way we see education probably will change drastically in terms of our roles. And right now, we as educators, we think we have a body of knowledge to teach. I'm suspecting in the future, we don't have a body of knowledge that fixed that we can actually teach. And I saw a video recently. It's basically what we're teaching in the first year, and in 4 years, when students graduate, the knowledge is already updated. It doesn't exist anymore, or is already different. And I see in areas, for example, e-marketing, that textbook changed so much, and students actually, rather than I teach them, I think they teach me when we get to the point. Actually, it's probably in the future, it's hard to really say, I'm the teacher, you're the student, or you're the student, I'm the teacher. It's more like a co-teaching and co-creation, interactive, mutually enhancing learning experience.
Thank you. Frank, here. Oh, no. Anybody else? Ruth, over there.
I think grown-ups are a lot better teaching themselves online than people who are in their early 20s. So I don't know if I expect it to change that much, but I think what is changing is the people coming into universities really want a sense of purpose and that they have a way to change the world, and they're very idealistic that way, which is great because they're very motivated in a classroom. And they come from an educational system where they collaborate a lot, because I hear my kids talking about the team test they took in their math course. You know, they take a quiz and they collaborate on it and stuff, and I think they like to work together and have a sense of purpose and to think they're going to college because they're going to change the world or they're going to change their communities. Another thing I think is really big in the industries they'll go into is Uber economy, and how they might be going into a job where they're going to be paid for service that they provide like a consultant and not necessarily working for a captive firm.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Peter here. Yes.
I think that the relation between science and tech and ethics will probably become more important. So, as I was talking with Frank earlier, what biology is going to be able to do before too long with gene editing, I mean, these sorts of issues are going to be really important and really pressing for students to consider. And so things might become more integrated in this way as they are forced to consider them.
Thanks. Other thoughts? Future of higher education? All right, so we'll move back to our last prompt. And this is an interesting one. Pretend that you're very rich. We all got a raise. Well, we haven't received anything yet. But if you were in a position to donate $10 million to the university, what is the one thing you would like to see that gift apply to and why? And the whole idea here is this is money that you value, work hard for, so it's something that's very meaningful to you. We know the campus has many needs, but if you had to choose to give this kind of money, what would you choose? And we will, let's see, do we have some minutes? Yeah, we have some minutes there for people to input something, and then we would like to hear those of you who want to share. You can continue to type as needed, and it will be nice if we get started with microphones again and see who would like to share. What would you do if you donated that? Suketo, did you raise your hand? Okay, good. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure.
So if I had $10 million, I would bequeath it to the university and set up an emergency fund for needy students. There are, particularly the student body we have, there are daily emergencies. Suddenly the brother who's paying the tuition lost his job and they can't enroll for the next quarter, or a car broke down and they don't have the $500 to fix it, so they can't come to class. It would have to be something that, it would have to be administered properly so that checks could be cut in 2 days, but that's what I would stipulate the money go for.
Thank you. Somebody else in the row.
I think I first maybe give that like $1 million first to have a kind of an award to ask really the students their creative idea about what would they do with the rest $9 million. Because I think my brain is really limited, but I'm really excited to hear from them. And it's a real contest, real award that they get money for the big idea. So we will find out. I like to find out by asking them.
That's actually a great idea. Anyone else?
I think interdisciplinary education, I would probably invest money into interdisciplinary education. I think we're missing that connection between social sciences and engineering. And I think if we can create a way, mechanisms to support that kind of education, because it is more expensive and does require more faculty time and different students' involvement. So it costs more, and universities today are not willing to pay for it.
Thank you. Come on, anyone else? These are fun to hear because these are not problems. This is actually, we're solving things, we're doing fun things with money. So anybody else wants to share their idea? Well, yeah, don't be limited. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that, but with other people, other sessions we've said, don't be limited by the 10 million. If you have a great idea and it will take more money, we'll assume you're rich enough to donate more.
In that case, I'll throw another idea. I think we have too many CSU campuses. We have right now, just in this neighborhood, we have Cal Poly Pomona, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State LA, Northridge, Cal State Long Beach. I think it makes sense to treat them all as one big campus and have each campus to develop an expertise and allow students develop maybe a transportation system, allows them to take courses from any of the campuses.
All right. Other thoughts? All right, then we'll go to our last prompt. Is there anything that you were hoping we will discuss, but we did not? So we will allow the input via today's meet, but we would like to start hearing from you right away. So you can provide input via today's meet, but we would like to hear your thoughts. Anything that you thought or were hoping we will discuss today, but we did not discuss.
I don't know if this was ever the time to talk about this, but in the master plan, I hope that there's a discussion of the agricultural land on campus and not building buildings on all of it.
Okay.
I think we never discussed the culture that we have at Cal Poly. I think this is a very important subject. And we can develop a culture of bureaucracy, we can develop a culture of innovation, we can have different culture, and I think this is probably what will make a university different than others.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I would love to know, how do you get your students' creative ideas regarding these topics for planning?
Are you asking us right now, or are you just saying that you?
I wanted to know how, the people who are doing the planning get the students' creative ideas regarding this, strategic planning.
The strategic planning.
Yeah.
Yes, we at the beginning we explained that there's 5 subcommittees. And our subcommittee is dealing only with faculty and administrators in academic affairs. There is another subcommittee that's conducting sessions and other using other instruments for collecting input from other constituencies, including the students. But we are not familiar with what they're doing at this point. So each one of the subcommittees is working on its own, and then we will report back to the steering committee. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to answer that. Other thoughts? On the feed, there, yeah. It may require that much money depending on what you're trying to stop. Anybody else?
Yeah, we probably, I haven't heard us discussing how technology can be used to help with some of the things we're trying to do, and how much we embrace that or reject it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anything else you were hoping?
I really agree with that, and I agree with what you said about culture, and to have a cultural climate where when something new is suggested, people are like, yes, 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 let's make it so, instead of, no, we can never do that. A more progressive attitude.
Other ideas?
Well, going further on the change of culture theme, I think we should, as a university, be more critical of ourselves and more reflective. I think there are a lot of words that praise us and show how we are unique, but I don't think there's enough discussion or I've been at campuses where the campus newspaper is severely critical of the university week after week. Things like that actually improve the university.
Other ideas? This is our last prompt for the afternoon. We still have a few minutes. One more call, last call. All right, Lina, then. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the members of the committee that were here this afternoon. Michael Godfrey and Beppe Lomiento helped with the microphones. Lina Neto was helping with the computer and the PowerPoint. Sepp Eskandari, who arrived a few minutes late, he was coming from the executive committee of the Academic Senate. I would like to thank the staff that has been providing support for our sessions, for all their wonderful help, Marisa Martinez and Sarah Freud. And I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to come this afternoon and share your thoughts. There will be another session tomorrow at 11:30 with lunch will be provided. If you have colleagues and people that you think should be here, encourage them to attend. And if you still have something to say and think about it in a week or so and you don't know what to do, strategicplan@cpp.edu. There's an email address for you. You can still provide more input. Thank you very much.